that we love so dearly to absolutely not go through pain. So why would we have such reverence for the life of a pet and the quality of life of a pet, but not the same reverence for the quality of life of a human being? So I find euthanasia to absolutely be a positive thing, and it is legal in some states. In some states, it is illegal. I'm sure we all remember Dr. Kevorkian and that whole situation. And yeah, exactly. And David says, I don't want to suffer if it gets to that point. Nobody wants to suffer. Nobody wants to suffer. I've always said when I get so old and feeble and I'm in bed and I'm pissing all over myself and shitting on myself and I can't eat anything and I smell disgusting and I look gross and I can't watch TV because I'm blind and I'm deaf. And I mean, what the fuck kind of life is that, right? I don't want to live that kind of life. And so for God's sakes, put me the fuck out of my misery. That's what I would say at that point too. And I think it's the humane thing to do. And I think that it's only, and humane, it has, human is in the word humane. So that's what it's all about. Okay. Next topic is under healthcare and medicine is, should marijuana be a medical option? And should marijuana be something that we have medicinally throughout the states? We'll talk about it as a recreational thing too, but medicinally, do you think marijuana should be allowed? I think absolutely marijuana should be allowed. And you're going to realize, those of you who've never listened to my show, if you're listening to the show for the first time, I'm a very liberal individual. I mean, listen to the opening of the show. And so there are very few things I'm going to be against because I'm very much a laissez-faire type of individual. As long as you don't do anything to hurt other people, and even if you're harming yourself, that's your own choice. Just don't hurt me or someone else, or to take someone else's rights to choose away from someone. So if it comes to medical marijuana and it helps you feel better because you have glaucoma and it helps you to see and get the pressure down in your eyes, which it does do, or you have cancer and you're going through chemotherapy and you need, the only thing that makes the nausea go away actually is medical marijuana, let it, for God's sakes, let the people have it. Who cares if it's an illegal drug? It's only illegal because America has decided it should be illegal. There's a bazillion drugs out there that are a lot more toxic and a lot more dangerous than marijuana, which is a natural substance that comes from the planet, that are not illegal. And if this is something that's illegal and actually helps people feel better and nothing else really does, for God's sakes, let them take it. There's no reason that someone shouldn't be able to take medical marijuana or marijuana at all, in my opinion. Prankville says, I actually have a hard time with pulling the plug. He says about euthanasia. He says if they ask for it, then that's perfectly fine. But just doing it because you may think that they are tired of suffering and they haven't even said it, I think is people taking the power of life and death in their own hands. I agree with you on that, Prankville. I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you on that. I think that it should be the person's choice. Absolutely. I think it should be the person's choice to absolutely pull the plug if they are mentally capable of doing so. And we're kind of backtracking, but I want to finish this topic because he made a good point here. I think it is the person's choice. It should be. However, there are times when the person is incapacitated and not able to communicate, or they're in a coma or whatever, and they can't tell you what their wishes are. That's why everybody should have a living will and a durable power of attorney, so that while they are still alive, and there's someone there for a medical power of attorney as well, there's someone there to actually take the ownership of your life. You're putting your life in this person's hands, whether it's your husband, your wife, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, family member, friend, whatever, that you've decided before you get to the point in your life where you are going to die, possibly. You're saying, this person, I'm giving them all the rights as if they are me, to make all decisions about my life. And I think that's perfectly acceptable, and that's the way everybody should have that done before they get sick. Even if you're 30 years old, even if you're 20 years old, you should have it, because you never know. You could get in a car accident, you could fall off a cliff. I mean, you never know. An airplane, I mean, there's a bazillion things that can happen to you throughout your life that you could die unexpectedly or get hurt or maimed or something. So that's why I think it's really important that people have these documents in place for that particular reason. Now, when it comes to the Christian thing, he says being a Christian, he believes that the power belongs to God only. Well, okay. God is not going to come down, and this is just where we disagree. God is not going to come down and say, okay, everybody, we're going to take Todd off of the unit here because what I want. And God's not going to come down and actually say that. So a human being has to make the decision. Either you yourself have to tell people, or your durable power of attorney or whatever has to direct someone to make the decision for you. You can't wait for God to make the decision. Otherwise, you're just going to lie there and die eventually. If that's what you mean by God, then okay. But eventually you're just going to die, and you don't know if you're suffering. You don't know what's happening while you're in a coma. And a lot of people say that you can actually hear in a coma, and you can hear people what they're saying and everything else. So I wouldn't personally take that choice. If that's your personal choice, Todd, that's cool. That's your choice, your religion, that's fine. But I would never leave my fate up to quote unquote God, because that to me means you're just leaving it up to whatever happens. So you're lying there dying and drooling all over yourself and in pain for an indeterminate amount of time, because you want God to make the decision for you as opposed to your family member or someone else. So, but I get your point and I agree with it. But anyway, so that's that. And back to medical marijuana. I think that it should be legalized. I think that it should certainly be something that people all over the country should have access to. Whatever their issue, whatever their ailment, they should absolutely have access to medical marijuana. There's no reason it shouldn't be legalized everywhere. The next thing is Obamacare. In 2010, Congress passed the Affordable Health Care Act, as it's called, which is Obamacare essentially. And essentially what this does is it actually allows, this is what Obamacare does. Let's talk about Obamacare, because this is the thing. This has been a very politicized issue or topic, and people have been trying to pass a standardized healthcare system in this country since FDR, okay? And Obamacare, what it's going to do is it's going to mean that every single person in this country has to have health insurance. If they don't have health insurance, then they have to pay a tax penalty, okay? That tax penalty helps cover the costs for people who are paying for insurance, or people who are not paying for insurance. I mean, going to ERs and things like that or whatever, and people who are paying for insurance. So the thing about that is that that's great. Okay, wonderful. And it also, what it does is it means if you have a pre-existing condition, let's say you have a pre-existing condition. Let's say you have cancer, or you have diabetes, or you have whatever condition you have, okay? As it stands now, before January 1st, 2014, before Obamacare kicks in, as it stands now, if you apply for health insurance and you tell them you have cancer, you have diabetes or HIV or whatever those things are you have, then it means that you will be denied, that they can deny you health insurance. And they always will deny you because it's a bad risk. And so, or if they don't deny you, which is rare, they're going to charge you like $1,000 a month for health insurance, okay, just for the insurance portion. Okay, so that's what happens now. After Obamacare kicks in January 2014, you will be able to get medical insurance at the same rates as everyone else, because it will be in a pool for the same age you are and everything else as anybody else, regardless of pre-existing conditions. So pre-existing conditions no longer exist after 2014, okay, after January 1st, 2014. It also means all children, regardless of their pre-existing condition, are covered. It means all the elderly are covered. It means all the sick are covered. Everybody has to have the same access to the same health insurance plans, okay? And it's also subsidized if you make under $40,000 a year. It's also subsidized for you to help you afford to pay for the insurance plan. So I don't have any problems with it. What do you think about Obamacare? Are you pro-Obamacare, or are you anti-Obamacare? Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea? I see healthcare as something that, well, I don't see it. The truth is healthcare costs this country trillions of dollars a year. And people who go to the ERs and they don't pay for their medical services, people who go to the ERs or go to doctors and don't pay them or whatever because they can't afford to. They don't have health insurance. And so I find it to be incredibly important that everybody have health insurance and be covered, because what's going to happen is the whole country is going to be healthier as a whole. Everybody in this country is going to be better off, ultimately, having had health insurance and without it. And people won't have to depend on paying exorbitant fees in the ER if they go. So I'm very much in favor of healthcare. and Obamacare, I mean, and I think it's going to help. It's not think it's going to help. It's definitely going to help this country in terms of our healthcare system. And the other thing is insurance companies. The reason the right, and I say the right meaning the Republicans and the Tea Partiers and the morons. No offense, anybody. They don't want this is because they're in bed with the insurance companies. The insurance companies control insurance, obviously. And they control who gets to be insured and who doesn't, and who gets to have access to healthcare or not. So the question becomes: is healthcare a fundamental human right? Is it a human right to have healthcare? Most civilized countries have answered this question: yes. Whereas here in the United States, we, for some reason, well, not for some reason, because we're government. The government is fucking owned by the fucking corporations. That's why. Answer that question: no. So Obamacare is changing that answer from no to yes. And so in the future, everyone will have access to health care. And I don't see how that's a bad thing. And if you're on the other side of this issue and you're saying that, oh, it's a bad thing for America, fuck you. Okay. Next we have, we're still in the healthcare thing. Let's see what else we have. Oh, vegetarianism. Nah, I won't talk about that. It's okay. Going down this list here. Right to healthcare. We just talked about that basically. Obesity. Let's talk about obesity. So, people say that okay, wait. Let me read the comments real quick from the chat room. There's chat comments. It says pro. David's pro Obamacare. Ken is pro Obamacare. David says exactly. Insurance companies control healthcare, and the right-wing nuts act like they don't. Exactly. Ken Boggle says it is a human right to have healthcare and medical marijuana. I agree with you. Thank you. I agree with you completely. Okay, so this issue is obesity. Now, obesity is something that is a touchy topic for a lot of people. My mother is considered, would be considered technically obese. I mean, she's not like, 500 pounds, but she's overweight, and she has diabetes, and she has high blood pressure, and so she has all these issues, right, because of her weight. She's had this weight for, I guess, for a while now, 20 years or so, and she's gone up and down. And she was on Fen-Phen for many years. In the 90s, she was on Fen-Phen. She lost all the weight. She looked great, right? And of course, then they found out Fen-Phen caused you to have heart problems, which she now has as a result of using Fen-Phen. So anyway, what's my point? Oh, so people who are obese, I love people who are obese just as much as I love someone who's skinny. I don't look at people based on their physical size and judge them like, oh, you're disgusting because you're overweight, or oh, you're disgusting because you're too skinny, or whatever. I look at people based on who they are inside. So the problem about obesity is people say, well, people who are obese cause the rest of us to pay more money in taxes and healthcare, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? It's true. That's true. They do cause the rest of us to pay more in healthcare. But so the fuck what? They pay. Everybody's got some issue or will at some life have some issue, and nobody's going to go through their entire life, be perfectly healthy, and never have one fucking issue. It's just not possible as a human being. So at some point in your life, there's some issue you're going to have, whether you cause it yourself or whether it's a genetic thing, that you're going to be responsible. Other people are going to be responsible to help cover your costs as an insured. So yes, right now you may be covering these people, or vice versa. So the fuck what? And then also people who are overweight are looked at by society. Hold on. Ken Boggle says, I call bull. You wouldn't date an obese person, would you? I was with somebody who was for 3 years or something, I think, years ago. So yeah, I would. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. So yes, the answer to your question, Ken, is yes, I would, depending on the person. Now I've lost my train of thought. What was I saying? So people who are obese are treated differently because society is conditioned to look at people the way they see people in the magazines, and people who are actually people who are really thin, rail thin, people who are extremely beautiful and perfect in every way, and they're brainwashed. We as human beings, especially Americans, are brainwashed to expect certain things and conditioned by magazines and entertainment industry to expect a certain look for everybody. And so we associate and attribute negative attributes to people who are different, whether it's because of their weight or whatever reason. 5x5 says, question, do you think persons with HIV/AIDS should get disability checks? Okay, is that related to this question about obesity? Because if it's not, we'll talk about that next. Because I don't want to get off topic. That's what I wanted to say. But in terms of people who are obese or whatever, I think they should be treated like everybody else. However, I think you have to recognize this one thing. Some people who are obese, it is their own fault because they overeat. They eat too much. They're emotional eaters. They don't move. They don't exercise. They just give up, whatever, and so they're obese. Other people are obese because